We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's February 16th here in Seoul. I'm Shin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Choi-ji.
Good morning.
Happy Friday. And Brooke Prince.
Hello, great to be here.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. For the first time in 14 years, South Korea's iconic vacation destination, Jeju Island, has seen the number of people leave surpass that of those who've moved there. From 2010, Jeju has been trying to attract more residents. Through media exposure and tourism advertisements, the island has promoted itself as a serene destination where people can escape from bustling city life and instead enjoy the perks of living in a nature-friendly location with lots to eat and see. That's why in the years 2016 to 18, around 100,000 residents poured into the island per year. But from 2019, new resident figures dropped. For the first time last year, the island had more people leave than come in, ironically due to the previously growing population, which has raised living costs. Also, the long unsolved problem of a lack of job opportunities. And from this year, top imported car brands like Mercedes-Benz and BMW have decided to use South Korea's homegrown navigation app, T-Map, on their cars to better reach the Korean consumer base. We've already seen car brands like Volvo and Jeep use T-Map instead of their own navigation app, and that's because T-Map is more suitable for drivers in Korea as it has better real-time information and quicker updates on the road situation. A consumer analysis site also found that as of 2022, only a little over 3 out of 10 imported car users use the default navigation app in their cars. The rest use T-Map. And last but not least, back in May, the National Youth Policy Institute conducted a survey on some 7,718 students from elementary to high school. The institute found that more than half of young South Koreans were for same-sex marriage. Also, 60% thought that it was totally fine for couples to have kids without getting married. A whopping 81% were for cohabiting without marriage. 9 out of 10 also said they were willing to get married to a foreigner. And the institute pointed out how the perception of marriage has drastically changed among the younger generation. They specifically highlighted a generational gap. In other words, the older generation has a relatively traditional concept of relationships, but most from this generation believe marriage is confined to a female and male and is a prerequisite to have a child. But as the latest NYPI survey showed, young people in Korea these days have expanded the definition and standards of what comprises a family. Now, here in the studio, we've seen a list of different results coming from this survey. So what were your thoughts on this? And are you happy to see sort of the younger generation bring out an expanded definition of what a traditional family could be?
So my dad usually has 2 questions for me whenever he calls me on the phone. And one of them is, when are you coming back? And the second one is, when are you getting married? And so usually his follow-up to that is, well, if you meet a Korean person, do you think their family will be accepting of you as a foreigner? And typically I have a lot of confidence when I answer that, yes, I believe they would be, especially because I've invested so much time and energy into learning the language. But of course, it is very encouraging to see it confirmed in concrete numbers that the majority of people, 9 of 10 people here, are very accepting and they would approve of a marriage between a Korean and a foreigner. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I also think it's a very positive sign that Korea is starting to embrace more diverse family structures.
Exactly. It's really nice. And especially the fact that our generation is leading that type of trend is really fascinating to see. Now, Chi-hee, what were your thoughts on this survey?
Well, I believe that, just like Brooke said, the shift in a more accepting and inclusive mindset is truly encouraging. And it serves as a testament to the fact that our generation, as well as the younger one, is becoming more open to diversity. I mean, families today come in all sorts of different forms, and there should no longer be any prejudice or discrimination against any couples or families that do not conform to the traditional notions of a family structure. And I feel like Korean law should also change to back up this change as well. And I myself individually am trying to change the mindset of my parents as well to move away from that traditional notion of a family structure.
It must be a bit difficult though, because there is that generational gap.
Exactly.
And they're quite conservative, because even for my parents as well, I can never imagine telling my parents that I would like to cohabit with my partner before marriage. There's just that generational gap there. But I am quite happy to see that from our generation, we're much more open-minded and really really willing to talk about this, even on air. So hopefully we'll see some societal change there. Now let's change gears to our main discussion now. Today we're going to be diving a bit deeper into a new phrase that's been trending among our generation, and it's called hip tradition. My AI voice secretary will tell you what it is.
Hip tradition. It's looking for something hip or trendy in unexpected places, namely locations, that give you a glimpse of history or traditional roots. This trend is booming among Korean millennials and Gen Z, who are going to museums or historical sites, such as palaces, to stay hip.
It's not just local millennials and Gen Z that are jumping onto this hip tradition trend. We're seeing a lot of foreigners becoming aware of this new word as well. But how exactly are people being a part of this hip tradition trend? Why don't you walk us through that?
Sure. So recently, there's been an increase in both foreign tourists as well as the younger generation who consider traditional Korean culture as trendy and hip rather than old-fashioned or outdated. Now, this has led to the trend of, like you said, hip tradition, where the younger generation adds modern and stylish features to make traditional items become new trends. And so souvenirs are no longer just for display, but are now designed as everyday items, such as glasses, watches, pouches, and even phone cases and umbrellas. And also foods that were once considered to be for old people only, like traditional snacks and drinks, and even black sesame. They have become popular as well. And also experiencing the palace tours and also engaging in different traditional experience programs has also become popular. And also furnitures.
Right.
Decorated with mother of pearl. They seem pretty old, you know. They were considered to be pretty old, but then they're now seen as stylish interior furniture as well.
Right, and I think NewsGen really caught up onto this trend early on, because if you remember, we had a Visit Seoul series where we took you around the hottest attractions here in the capital. And I remember we had an episode where we would go around palaces.
Yeah.
And there I saw a lot of youth as well. They were wearing traditional hanbok, buying a lot of goods. But aside from that, would you like to add on to how young people are jumping onto this hip tradition trend, and specifically foreigners?
Well, speaking of foreign tourists, I have brought a few here with me today. Today is a very special show because my family is currently watching it live. Hi, guys. I'm very excited to have them here. They're here to watch me perform in the musical Irte Nore. And of course, they're here to see News Generation as well. And it's always really exciting for me to get to show them my life in Korea and just to show them more about this country that I love so much. This isn't actually their first time here. The last time they were here, I took them every possible tourist attraction that I possibly could in a short period. Like Chi-hee mentioned, the palace tours. We went to Gyeongbokgung, Namsan Tower, Insadong, Myeongdong, all sorts of different places. And this time is no different. I have many plans for them. After the show, we're going to head to Latte World.
Wow.
And then I do plan to take them to some traditional markets so that they can experience some more traditional flavors of Korea. And one that I have been into recently that I actually just recently discovered is yakgwa, which again is one of those flavors that's considered more old-fashioned, but it's come back into fashion now. And you see it at all sorts of cafes. There are these delicious yakgwa brownies and cookies, drinks. So we'll definitely be stopping by a bakery to try some of those. And of course, we'll be doing more traditional tourist activities as well. I'm really looking forward to it.
And just FYI, yakgwa in Korean, it's like this traditional biscuit that you make out of a lot of sugar, but traditional honey as well. And you have a bite, it's very chewy, but it does have that traditional tang to it. And to sum up, many are buying goods from museums or retro goods that resemble the past because it seems hip. And among this surging consumption, though, I'm curious as to what the proportion of is from millennials and Gen Z. How much are they taking up in this trend?
Right. So as you see on the screen, according to a sales analysis which was conducted by the National Museum of Korea, over 50% of the consumers of museum merch or museum goods were millennials and Gen Zs. Now, the National Museum Foundation of Korea, which designs and sells cultural assets owned by national museums across the country, reported that sales of cultural asset-related souvenirs in general have grown significantly from 3.8 billion won in 2020 to 11.7 billion won in 2022. Now, this was the highest since the foundation's launch back in 2011. And also other everyday life items such as wireless mobile phone chargers shaped like a tray. And like a traditional tray made of mother of pearl, and the device case for Korea celadons were also very popular and they were going out of sale almost as soon as they were launched. And people in their 20s and 30s, just like that, like to bring what they've seen in museums into their daily lives. And also last year, the National Museum of Korea organized a pop-up exhibition in Myeongdong, which showcased over 200 items, including celadon, white porcelain, crafts, and the pensive Bodhisattva statue, and was a massive hit. Now, this miniature of this Bodhisattva statue gained huge popularity, in particular as a therapeutic souvenir after BTS's leader, RM, purchased it at an exhibition and posted it on social media. Now, this statue was actually designated as Korea's number 78 national treasure, and it's a Buddha immersed in deep thought. And the younger generation is really spending their money to buy museum artifact-themed products, including this Bodhisattva, as well as gilt bronze incense burners as well. And the cumulative sales of this statue miniature have reached 32,000 units, according to a survey.
Wow, so we can really tell, as we saw in the VCR as well, that there's so many relics from the past that's captivating the younger generation's attention. But Brooke, would you like to add on what else is really captivating their attention?
Well, I think the consumption pattern that we're seeing these days is that young people in Korea are making more meaningful purchases. And by that I mean they're spending more of their money on products that have some sort of cultural or historical significance. So imagine going to Insadong and you see all of those gift shops with the beautiful handcrafted souvenirs, like the mother of pearl or the celadons or white porcelain. In fact, last year when my family visited, my brother and his wife, they brought home these two gorgeous handmade mother of pearl pieces that they put in their new home. And that's typically how it goes. These products are usually bought by foreign tourists that want to bring a little piece of Korea back home with them. But nowadays we're seeing that more Korean young people as well are also interested in buying these traditional goods, except there's a modern twist to them, right? So instead of a jewelry box, perhaps this year maybe my family can go home with a nice mother of pearl AirPod case or something like that. So I think that's the hip tradition trend that we're seeing.
Exactly. A combination of something modern and tradition becomes hip. And to find out if there's a similar trend in other parts of the world, we asked our viewers if they've ever bought any goods resembling things from the past, whether that be history museum goods or souvenirs. So take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Leon. Leon said in Singapore, some traditional accessories like nyonya beaded slippers have been popular in recent years, and some popular traditional items to buy as souvenirs include batik, which is a type of colorful patterned fabric, and some Peranakan ceramics, which are known for their beauty and intricacies, often featuring animal and floral motifs. Now, Tasmia said henna tattooing, henna staining, or just henna, has been a popular traditional product in Bangladesh for more than 500 years. It's made from the dried leaves of the plant itself and is used in direct application to the skin as painless temporary tattoos, in particular for decorating hands and feet. Benny said here in the Philippines, one example of a traditional product is Cebu's guitar. I believe a lot of music lovers' goal is to have an instrument that tourists from Korea and other countries will love. So it's amazing to see that this isn't just a trend confined here to Korea. And with every trend, there's always new marketing schemes that try to better target consumers, which is exactly why we're going to include a marketing expert to explain how this hip tradition trend has affected the market. We're going to include Dr. Alex Barash, an associate professor of marketing at the University of Colorado, in our talks. Welcome, Dr. Barash.
Hi, good to see you.
All right, Dr. Barash, let me ask you the first question. Could you first explain the psychology behind a growing number of millennials and Gen Z being quite invested in this hip tradition trend?
Yeah, definitely. I think this really reflects broader trends that affect everyone. As your examples now just showed, there's an increase in digitization, urbanization, globalization that has really made us across different societies more individualistic. It's reduced our sense of connection with others, with our communities, and with our past in a way that wasn't true several decades ago. And so now we're all looking to meet those psychological needs. We all want a sense of connection. We want to feel more, we want to feel less isolated and more connected with our communities. This stressful reality that we're all experiencing it's really no wonder that we're feeling nostalgic for simpler times, that we want a sense of comfort, a form of escapism in this unsettled world that we all live in. And of course, there's also these generational differences. Social media is a powerful catalyst shaping fashion trends. And so we see with Millennials and Gen Z especially, that they really are trying to reflect on their roots. They care about celebrating diversity, and they really want to support traditional artisans and embrace sustainable fashion trends. And those are the values of this generation that we're seeing both in the fashion, but also in the other examples you guys provided with furniture and items that they want to have in their homes. And so I think this is a trend that really reflects a lot of other trends in our society.
Right. So you mentioned nostalgia and people wanting to go back to their roots. So buying something that resembles the past, then how has this affected the market these days?
Yeah, of course, with demand means more options available. That's always a good thing. That means more consumers can get their psychological needs met. So we're seeing cheaper mass-produced versions of these goods that might have been only uniquely available or handmade in the past. And I would say that's in general a good thing. The way that these generations have made it sustainable is that they're taking the traditional while also pushing the boundaries, like some of the other examples that you guys provided. So I think it's really impressive that they're able to take these ethnic connections with the past, but add a unique touch to it. And we also see Millennials and Generation Z really prioritizing comfort and convenience. That's also going to make it more sustainable because they want it to be practical and uncomplicated. They want ready to wear clothing that is, off the rack. And so that's going to also allow it to last longer.
Hi, Professor. Thank you so much for your insights. I have one last question for you. How long do you think this trend will go on for? And usually, how long do specific consumption patterns last?
Great. Yeah, this is a very interesting cycle that we experience in the fashion industry. Of course, if you see a rapid trend adoption, it oftentimes means for a rapid decline. But I would say that this is actually not the case where we're seeing a fad. It's tied to these underlying societal shifts. I don't think those needs are going to reverse anytime soon. And so even as the more temporary after effects of the pandemic fade, I think we're going to see a persistence of some of these connections to the past. And in general, we see fashions come up every 20 years or so. And so even if it's not these particular traditions, we might see other ones that have a resurgence, maybe the 80s and 90s, as well as is at least the case here in the US.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
Nice being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and as a final note, I'd like to ask our panelists, would you guys like to see this type of trend continue to evolve? How long would you like to see it for? And are you willing to try it out?
Well, for sure, and like Professor Barash said, I don't think it will be a fad.
Right.
And the museum's strategy of making traditional Korean culture more accessible to young people is really evident in the sensibility that attracts them. And these efforts to communicate the beauty and significance of traditional culture in a modern way are proving to be very effective, seen through their popularity. And these attempts definitely help to promote traditional culture without alienating the public, like Professor Barash said as well, and capturing its unique characteristics, history, as well as the meaning behind it in a very new form. And I actually, in fact, received a little bed lamp as well from the National Museum of Korea after interpreting for them. And I really like it. It looks pretty hip, and I left it next to my bed. And I'm using it as a very practical lamp, really.
It's really nice. And I think it really has to do with if your house per se is modern. It's like a modern white interior, and if you have like a traditional relic there, it really stands out.
Nice accent.
It is. It's a beautiful accent. I think that imbalance actually
Right.
makes it more hip. And also, I'd like to point out from our generation, especially Gen Z, it turns out that a lot of people are actually quite interested in history, which is why here in Korea, box office sales for history-related movies have been off the charts compared to other traditional heroic movies. And I hope that this trend, while it could be very fashionable and very hip, at the same time we see a bit more curiosity and a lot of information regarding history be blown out to the public. Now, what about you, Brooke? Are you willing to jump onto this trend anytime soon?
Absolutely. Personally, I love seeing trends come back into style. When I was young, it was the 80s.
yes.
And of course, now it's very surreal to say it, but I see 2000s themed
know.
parties and
Already.
things like that. Yeah, already. But it's fun. I think it's nostalgic, and I get why the hip tradition trend is so popular now. And I think it's a great way to introduce young people to things from the past that they
Right.
might not have known about before. And especially as a foreigner, it provides a great opportunity for me to learn more about the Korean culture as well. So I think it's great, and I hope to see it continue moving forward.
And as the professor mentioned as well, this is a cycle. It's not like the first time we're seeing things from the past come into the present and trend. And that's why I hope it could be a bridge between generations. It could be a discussion starter for us to be talking with our parents or even our grandparents, and they can look at our goods and be like, I remember having that as a
Right.
university
It's a
student.
nice way to connect.
Exactly. Or borrowing some of your grandparents' clothes
yes.
to wear because that could be trendy as well. So hopefully this hip tradition trend becomes a bridge between different generations. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Choi Ji-hee
Always a pleasure.
and Brooke Prince.
Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next week. We are
News Generation.